In this video, I'm going to go over those problems that I recommended you try at the end of the 2.1 Introduction to Symbolizing Sentences and Symbolic Logic video. I'm going to try to do these for all of the videos, so I go over those practice problems. So while you'll generally have solutions in the solutions document, you'll also have me to walk through them with you if you want to follow along or have any questions. So for the first one we have, Bob isn't a marathon runner. So we're going to start by doing our truth functional paraphrase that pulls out any connectives. Here we only have one connective, and that's the negation, right? We have Bob isn't a marathon runner, so we can turn this into the negation of a positive statement. So we can turn it into, it is not the case that Bob is a marathon runner. And now we can symbolize that sentence, right? Now that we have it broken apart. So we're going to take this first part here, and we're going to turn it into a negation. And then we're going to take the Bob is a marathon runner, and we're going to turn it into an atomic sentence. We're going to turn it into B. So these problems are all fairly straightforward, so this video is going to be pretty short, but I do want you guys to see how these are done, and it'll be much more helpful as we get into the harder stuff later. So the next problem that I asked you guys to do if you did that recommended practice is 1F, which I made a mistake. This isn't one you actually have a solution to in the guide, but I'm going to go over it here, so hopefully that makes up to it. So 1F is not all joggers are marathon runners, where we have that not already right out in the front. So we're just going to change that not to it is not the case to do our truth functional paraphrase correctly. And then we don't have in sentential logic any way to break all joggers are marathon runners into any parts. When we get into the next system that we're going to do in the second half of that class, we'll be able to break that apart and symbolize it. But for now, we're going to have to do it the same way. Right? So it is not the case is going to become a negation. And then all joggers are marathon runners, we're going to do with an atomic sentence letter. So I'm going to use J for all joggers are marathon runners. So these two problems are very similar. All joggers are marathon runners is something we're going to be able to break down more in later in this course when we get to our second system called predicate logic. But for now, that's all we've got. So now let's go on to the second set of problems. So 2A was if Felicia vacations in Bermuda, so will Clarence. Here, so is serving that position of then. So when we do our truth functional paraphrase, we're going to say if Felice vacations in Bermuda, then Clarence will vacation in Bermuda. It's always important to make sure that in your truth functional paraphrase, you have complete sentences, right? We have to have a complete sentence that captures that idea as something we can put into an atomic sentence. It has to be truth functional. So in your paraphrase, you can't do something like will Clarence or then Clarence will also. That has to be that whole sentence on its own. Once you get more comfortable with this, you don't have to do the truth functional paraphrases. We won't be assessing you based on your truth functional paraphrase. We'll be assessing you based on your symbolization. But for your own good, it's important to make sure that you know you need complete sentences. So we have our connective as an if then. So we're going to symbolize that using the horseshoe. And then we need to take our antecedent and turn it into a sentence letter. So here I'm going to use F for if Felice vacations in Bermuda. And then I'm going to use C for Clarence will vacation in Bermuda. So that overall sentence is F, horseshoe for that conditional, C. So 2C looks very similar. Veronica will vacation in Bermuda if Felice does. And importantly here, we have this if towards the end of the sentence, right? And it doesn't say only if, it's just that if by itself. So we need to reverse it when we do our truth functional paraphrase to have the antecedent, the thing that follows that if clause out front. So now we're going to have if Felice vacations in Bermuda, then Veronica will vacation in Bermuda. And now we can do that symbolization just like we did before, right? We know we have a material conditional. So that's going to be right here in the center. F for Felice vacations in Bermuda, and V for Veronica does. So the last problem, 2E, is very, very similar, right? Veronica will vacation in Bermuda provided that Clarence will. Provided that means the exact same thing as if, right? And here we have that at the end of the clause, so we know that that statement, Clarence will, meaning Clarence will vacation in Bermuda, is our antecedent. So we need to do that paraphrase. If Clarence vacations in Bermuda, then Veronica will vacation in Bermuda. And now that we have that truth functional paraphrase, it runs the exact same way, right? We have our conditional. We know our antecedent is Clarence vacations in Bermuda. Then we have Veronica will vacation in Bermuda. So that's it for these examples. The examples, once we get into complex sentences, will take quite a bit longer and be quite a bit more complicated. But that's it for those recommended practice problems. Hopefully these all make sense to you, and if they do, that means you're in a really good place to take the next step and get into complex symbolization.